This is the city we call our own. These are the stories of the people we call our neighbors. This is the heartbeat of our hometown. Naperville, this is Real Talk. All right, welcome back to Naperville Real Talk. This is the podcast where we talk about all things Naperville, and this is our monthly real estate market update. And I want to welcome in our guest, Mr. Todd Gosden from Compass Mortgage. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me in again today. I much appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, for you folks who follow the podcast, whether you watch on YouTube or you follow along on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, you kind of know Todd and I like to accomplish a few things on these monthly updates. And we want to make sure that you are aware of what's going on because, for most people, the home, your primary residence, is a huge chunk of your net worth, if not the biggest piece of it. Yeah. And so, being aware of what's going on with the market is just like you checking in on your mutual funds, right, Todd? That's super
totally
important.
You should constantly be checking in on it. Why not? Right? It's money.
That's right. So even if you're not buying or selling right now, you need to know what's going on so that you can plan, whatever the future looks like for you. So we're going to talk about what's happening in the market. I mean, there's a lot of questions about that right now, and I know, Todd, you're probably getting those questions because we are in the popular word in real estate is a shift, and it's overused, but we are definitely in the last 12 months for sure in this new market. We went through sort of the pandemic market, and then we're really kind of out of that, and now we're in something totally different. And so how does that affect you as a seller, as a buyer? So we're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about if you're active in the market right now, what's the best way to prepare? Yep. So, Todd, I want to, kind of do one thing that we've been doing the last few months, and that's just give a quick tip here. So this one's going to be more specifically for my sellers. And if you follow me on Instagram at Grano Realtor, you'll see I dropped a little video about this the other day, but it's about pricing your home. And when you're trying to get your home sold, the old sort of tried and true for decades way of pricing a home was you would talk with your agent and you would kind of come up with what you think maybe the top price that you could sell it for would be within reason. Yeah. You would list it there and then you would wait. And you would wait for buyers to come, take a look at it, and you'd wait for the feedback that you got. And if they didn't, weren't interested right away, you would lower the price. Right. You would kind of wait till that lowered price met the buyer's expectations, right?
Right.
And there's actually a really specific reason that we did this 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's because we didn't have the same data that we have today.
Correct.
So at that time, I don't want to date you, Todd, but I mean, there was a time in real estate, and I'll admit it was before me, where the way buyers found homes was either, through word of mouth or driving around and looking at signs, or if they went straight to a realtor to start, they would look through books of listings, right? I mean, they'd be flipping pages, and that's how they would find homes. So the information was kind of secret almost, and really kind of out of the hands of the consumer. Well, the difference today, and the reason that affects the sale price is nobody really knew what the home might sell for, and buyers certainly didn't know for sure what the home was worth. So it was this dance of finding that right sale price. Well, today it's all out there. All the data is out there. You can go on Zillow, and I'm not talking about this estimate, which is not usually accurate, but you can go out on Zillow or on Redfin or Realtor.com, and you can look at closed sales in the area. And if you have a little bit of an idea of what you're doing, you can make an apples to apples comparison about homes and say, that one that Bob just listed, boy, that looks like it's listed high, Right. And buyers know that right away. And so you're not going to get away with that old pricing model. So all that to say, my big tip is price the home according to the market data. And here's the big reason too. The old model of waiting for a long time actually costs you money. Totally. Because if you think about it, you have two homes in the same neighborhood, Todd, and you and Vicky are going to go out and look at homes. You see one home that's been on the market for 2 months, one home that just came on the market and there's a line down the street to get in the open house, right? If you have interest in both of those homes, which one are you going to have to be more aggressive with the offer on?
Good question, huh?
Right? The one that's got all the interest.
That's right.
Not the one that's been sitting there. Right?
Exactly.
If it's been sitting there for 2 months, you're going to say, "Hey, Chris, do you think we could write them a lower offer?" It's been sitting there for a while, right? They'd probably take less, right?
Right.
And that's absolutely accurate thinking. So the time on market compared to the sales price, there's an absolute correlation there. So for people who say, "Oh, I don't care about selling it quick," well, if you care about getting the most money, you do care about selling it quick.
Yep.
Because the quicker they sell, typically the more money they sell for.
Sure do. Yep.
So that's my advice on that.
That's a good tip.
Let's get into some numbers, because I think we have some interesting news to break, which is going to be maybe surprising for some folks, maybe not surprising. But we've been hearing for how long now, Todd? 9 months, that prices are going down, right? Every time you turn on the TV, I mean, doesn't matter what channel it is, Fox, NBC, MSNBC, CNN.
Doesn't matter.
Prices are going down, right? Oh, the real estate market's going down.
Yep.
Well, one thing that you and I know, but we got to remind our audience, is when you look at national news, they're talking about national numbers.
That's right.
And real estate is not national, it's local. Yeah.
Local.
And that's right. And so it can be completely different, right? I mean, San Francisco has nothing to do with Wichita, Kansas, right? And
well, any more than St. Louis with Chicago.
Exactly.
Being in the same region, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that's a great point. And let's make it even more apparent. Naperville to Chicago, or Naperville to
Wheaton or Glen Ellen or whoever.
That's right. That's right. It's all very specific, because every region, every town or city has their own set of desirability related to jobs, related to a transportation, whatever it may be. School's the big one. So you always have to look at the local data, and that's why we do this podcast.
That's right.
So I'm going to look at 2 data sets today, and I think it might be a little surprising. So for all the people who have said prices are going down, when I look at the Naperville median sale price, okay, this is looking at last month's data. So we're here in April, looking back at March as the most recent month of data for this year. Going back 12 months, home values in Naperville on a detached single family home increased from March of 2022 to March of 2023, 12.6%. So we still sit at...
Say that one more time.
Yeah. An increase from 1 year ago to this year in Naperville of single family homes, 12.6%.
Amazing.
Now, if your mutual fund went up 12.6%, you think you'd be happy in a year?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so for sellers, that's great. For homeowners, it's great. Your equity continues to improve. All you did was live in the house, and now you're, 13% wealthier, right? And there's a great reason to stop renting, by the way. But let's talk about local, right? So now if I look at DuPage, DuPage County as a whole, and I want to do more of this in future weeks and kind of zoom out a little bit. DuPage County, only a 6.3% increase countywide. So Naperville is outperforming its, and obviously part of Naperville is in Will County, but Naperville is outperforming DuPage County by two times. Better increase of sale, of value over the last year.
Yep.
And one thing to look at is when I look at Naperville, that median sales price now hasn't changed for 3 months. So it's still up 13% over last year, but since January, it's maintained the same price. So we've seen stagnation since January. So I'm interested to see next month and the month after what things do. DuPage County as a whole, March was the first month, and we're talking 12-month averages, so we can really average this out over the seasons, right? But DuPage County, even though it's up 6.3% over last March, we actually saw finally a decrease in the median sales price between February and March. So
interesting.
Yeah, so the median sale price in February, 12-month average, was $429, and we're down to $425.
Wow.
So that means there are parts of DuPage County that are seeing decreases. Very modest, obviously, right? But Naperville continues to outperform the region. And then if you zoom out even further, I've been looking at, and you can Google these kind of things, but Fortune magazine is often a good resource. They're showing you some of these heat maps to show you what prices are doing across the country. And if you look at their heat maps, the Midwest and like the Mid-Atlantic, Tennessee, and then even towards the East Coast a little bit, Pennsylvania, et cetera, they're still seeing increases in home values. Whereas the West Coast, Oregon, Washington, California, and then Arizona, and down in Florida, these are places where we saw some of the craziest increases over the pandemic. They are now having the most severe decreases.
Interesting, right?
And that doesn't it tell you everything you need to know about the locality of it all?
Well, even when you look, so you just use Florida as an example, right? It depends where you're at in Florida.
Exactly.
If you're in Naples versus Palm Beach versus Fort Lauderdale versus Miami, they're all different markets completely.
Or Jacksonville or
Jacksonville,
City,
Orlando, wherever you want to go. So
right.
People don't understand that when you give data is very hyper-local and very regional to be able to get a true story of what you're seeing in the market.
That's right. And so you wouldn't, just to put it in housing is one of those things where, I don't know, I think sometimes we're very comfortable with it. So we just sort of accept these high level bits of information we hear, and we don't dig in because we're not as skeptical maybe as we need to be. But again, like if you're looking at your portfolio, if you have money in the market, what if you have money that's in like the tech sector, but then you have commodities too, or whatever, right? Or you have money in medical field or whatever. You can't take a rise or a fall in one sector as representative of the entire market.
That's right.
So you've got to really be intelligent when you're managing. You're talking about your home equity is one of the biggest pieces of most people, not everybody, but most people's portfolio. You've got to be in tune with it. So that's where, hopefully people are finding that kind of value from this podcast. But then the last thing, go ahead, please do.
No, one thing I wanted to add to that is even if you break it down regionally, the Midwestern region of the country is typically, from an affordability standpoint, the most favorable sector of the entire country.
Yes.
And then when you break down Chicago into that versus other cities, take the top 50 cities in the country, we are one of the most diverse cities, not only with people, but also types of companies and businesses and corporations.
Yeah.
We typically see less of a downfall here locally in Chicagoland, and I'm saying the Chicago community as a general, than many will see in other regions of the country, by far.
Yeah, well, you're right. And that's why part of the reason we see such these drastic swings on the West Coast is a lot of those cities on the West Coast are so heavily involved in one industry, particularly tech. Yeah. Right. So you don't see that as much here because of, you're right, the diversity of industry makes this just location. We benefit from location because we're center of the country. We're a major transportation hub for logistics. So there's always a desirability to be here for companies and just individuals. It's interesting, Todd. I'm getting a lot of folks who are saying, well, my job is remote now from the pandemic. We've switched over to remote and I can really live wherever I want. Right. And I've got family in California and I've got family in New York. And so we're going to live in Chicago so we can just kind of bop back and forth.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that kind of insulate us. And actually, Chicago as a whole, like you said, Chicagoland, the whole region, is outperforming the nation in home values.
Sure is.
And it's for the first time in like 7 years, I think, is the stat that I saw. So
right.
Yeah. So that's make you feel good, I would think, right?
Exactly. It all comes down, people, it's so much perspective, and the only thing you hear is on a large scale, not a hyper-local. Yeah, so it makes a difference.
And it's doom and gloom. The news, they're trying to sell ratings, right? They're trying to sell
it's
advertising
clickable,
slots.
Right?
Yes.
You hear something, you want to see what it is, and it ends up sometimes not even being what the title of the actual story is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, all right, all that said, so then for those of you who are active in the market, that's kind of the snapshot for anybody who just wants to keep up on their equity. For those of you who are active in the market, how do you, what's the local market like? How do you proceed? Well, I think Todd and I can very easily share the same report, is that from, maybe August of last year to maybe January of this year, we really did sort of see a cool down in terms of, obviously not prices on an annual basis, but just activity and sort of the intensity of the market. That really did happen. And we saw it on listings and with buyers. As we got back into this spring, it ramped up so quickly. And you had, I think, buyers adjusting their expectations for interest rates, finally saying, okay, I'm not going to live in the dream world of 2% interest rates anymore, And so, what's so funny, by the way, let me pause on that, Todd. I'll have to share it on Facebook or something. I watched this great video clip online this morning, and it was a news report from 1981, maybe 1979, somewhere in that neighborhood. And they were talking about buyers adjusting their expectations to 17% interest rates. And they had buyers on this news report saying, well, it is what it is, and those are the rates, and we just have to accept it.
Amazing.
Right. And here we are 40 years later saying, oh gosh, 6.5 sounds high,
Yeah.
So it puts it all in perspective, but
very much so.
So I do think the buyers have adjusted their expectations, as they should. That's the intelligent thing to do. And unfortunately, however, sellers, the inventory has continued to drop. So we're down about 25% Naperville inventory this year over last year. So that's created, again, a really, really competitive market. And that's what I want to kind of flow into our topic of conversation for the last bit of our show here today, is we are once again, when the home is priced well and when it's presented well, we are once again into this situation where we have tons of offers. Homes are absolutely flying. Don't get me wrong. If somebody priced it badly, or if they didn't take good care of it, you could definitely find those properties out there right now that are sitting, for a month or two. And maybe that's the kind of property you want to go after and find yourself, a better deal. So those exist. And if you want to know more about that, we can definitely let you know. But for the average person who's looking for that kind of turnkey property, which most people are, and, and we see it pop up on a Friday, it's gone by Sunday.
Totally.
So how do we compete? Do we want to win, or do we want to sit on the sidelines and complain?
Yeah, well,
and I think most people want to win.
I think they do. And the hard part is, to win, you got to be prepared to win.
Yeah.
Right. It's you got to get yourself set up for the greatest opportunity to win, because you have to understand you're not the only one playing the game.
No. And people are in it. I mean, they are in it to win it. I'm working with some buyers right now, going through the process. And I've had some buyers this year. I mean, certainly some of the things that Todd and I are going to talk about, but there's ways to give yourself a much better advantage in these situations than other buyers have. And thankfully, we're able to prevail more times than not, but you can't win them all. And I've had some buyers write some fantastic offers. I've coached them, and they're smart buyers. They know, they listen well, and they've written some great offers. And they say, Chris, what do you think? You think we're going to win? And I say, hey, it's a great offer. I don't see any reason why you should be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Some people go crazy, and you can't always help that. Right. But let's talk about a couple things that are really important to help you win. So I think expectations is one. And so one note I'll give on expectations. So let's say you go to Todd and you say, Todd, how much home can I afford? Here's the monthly payment I'd like to have. Just for example, Todd says, okay, for that monthly payment, roughly in this area, depending on taxes, et cetera, you can comfortably buy up to $500,000. Okay?
Right.
And that's great. So what I would suggest is, let's look at homes that are priced at $450,000 with the expectation that on a good property, you're going to pay more than that, right? So don't look at the very top of your budget and then hope that we can steal it at list price, because that's probably not going to happen. So that's kind of one thing. And then part two, the biggest thing that we can do to make a seller choose your offer over others, aside from price, which is always going to be a big piece of it, is give them absolute confidence that your loan is going to close. And I can tell you, as a listing agent, that's the biggest thing I scrutinize. When I'm looking at multiple offers, I'm calling all the lenders there. And if I see I hate to say this, but it's true. If I see a lender that's on my no-no list, they're not going to get a great look because we've all had those bad experiences. So that's why the importance of a local lender is so huge. And then strengthening your financing is great as much as you can. So Todd, would you speak to that a little bit?
Well, no, it's important. It's kind of like, as I always say, in anything that you want successful, especially real estate, you have your agent who's acting as the quarterback, right? It's a team effort. So you have your lender, you have your attorney, you have your inspector, you have all these people, and typically your lender, your agent is going to know who they want you to work with.
Sure.
Right? Because they have a track record with them, and they know that through that track record, unless something really is weird or goes sideways, that this team will move us from here to here.
Right.
Right. And I think it's important to understand that hyper-local is not only matters when it comes to economics, but it also matters when you're looking to be successful in buying a home.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very hard to fall into that, easy to fall into that trap of the 1-800 abyss.
Yes.
You know, I'm trying to call somebody and I've talked to 12 different people now. I have no idea what's going on. I can't even get somebody to return my call. You know, one of the most important things that we do, and I know you do as well, is you keep saying expectation, is always letting somebody know, here's what's going to be next. Here's what's going to be next. Here's what's going to be next. Because if you just flood them with information through a hose, they're going to forget it all anyway.
Yeah.
Everything goes in snippets, and that's what helps make the experience so great. And that's what you do so great, is you give people a little enough just to keep moving down the track. So when they get there, they're like, yeah, this is actually easy.
And I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand how this plays out, because we'll have these conversations and I always try to paint a picture to give concrete examples. And I'll give you one example. I was on the listing side of a condo this weekend. We had multiple offers on the property, and I had an agent who said to me, hey, here's my client's offer. We don't have a pre-approval letter with it. I'm so sorry. It's a holiday weekend and the lender's out of the office. Well, this was Saturday, so it wasn't a holiday yet. I mean, I like Easter weekend too, but I was working on Saturday and I took Sunday off with my family. And so I said, gosh, do you think you could call them, to get that pre-approval letter? Because I mean, I'll present the offer, but I don't know that my seller is going to be very excited about an offer that doesn't have a pre-approval letter with it. That's my nice way of saying there's no way in Hades they're going to even consider it, because I'll tell them not to. And they just couldn't, well, no, yeah, they don't work on the weekend. And I've had that experience on the listing side. I've had experience when buyers, choose not to work with a local partner, and they say, oh, I'm going to work with, whatever. I don't want to name names, but 1-800mortgage.com or I don't know, whatever, these giant big national companies. And I try to call them, right? And it's a Saturday. And I mean, half the time you can't even find a human's number. You're getting through to the big menu system,
Sure.
I mean, so that is so important just from a communication standpoint. And then preparing the file. So, I mean, we've talked about it before, Todd, but would you, again, just once more, give people the understanding, the difference between, there's some lenders that say, oh, yeah, well, we pre-qualify you. And then there's some lenders that say, well, we pre-approve you. And then you can even go a further step and take the file into underwriting. What's the difference between all those things?
Well, so pre-qualified is somebody just taking a napkin, taking chicken scratches while they're at the restaurant on a Saturday afternoon saying, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so unfortunately, just so everybody knows, pretty good is not acceptable ever. Yeah. Okay, so the next step is pre-approval. And pre-approval is essentially what happens is you ask for somebody's assets, ask for somebody's income, so there's validation, and then you run it through what they call Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's automated underwriting system. And if it clears it, 99.999% of the time, it's going to work.
Right.
But then it comes into when someone is self-employed or someone has tax returns. Sure. Sometimes it may take an extra day or two because you need validation from someone else other than a computer, right? Sure. The next step of that is if you're out looking, and people struggle with this, is that if I can tell the listing agent for the team here that you actually have your mortgage underwritten by an underwriter, and we've already cleared the assets and the income, because really those are the two biggest things could ever go sideways typically. Once you got the credit, the assets, and the income, it usually is pretty clear sailing. And you could say, and I could say to a listing agent, listen, an underwriter's only validating all these things. By saying that, you're telling them like, wow, okay, so what do we have left to do? We just need an appraisal and title, and we could close in 15 days. If Chris can take that to someone who you're trying to buy a house with, that gives him tremendous leverage for you to be able to win a circumstance of saying, yes, I have an underwritten file here. And most listing agents will say to you, what does that mean, underwritten file?
Right, right.
What do you mean, they've actually gone through the process? Yes. Yeah. Lots of people don't think they can get underwritten without having an address.
Right.
And you can. So I always advocate that is the strongest and best thing to do, because you're giving Chris a greater opportunity of winning when you're up against 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 different offers, to be able to see at least you're in the top 3 at this point, probably.
Well, that's huge, because that's the other thing that I think a lot of folks don't understand is, okay, let's just pretend there's 10 offers. And that's very common right now. Again, it really is. So
very often
everybody's writing a pretty good price, right? I mean, like when I look at these, I mean, sure, you get a couple that, well, we're offers list price. Okay, well, that's not going to win it. But the other 7 are probably 10, or anywhere between 3 or 4 or 5 or 10% over the list price. So they're all going to be pretty competitive there.
Yes,
these days, most offers are for as is condition. So they're all going to be pretty competitive there. And so how else can you stand out? Well, this is a huge way.
Huge.
So, I won't harp on that anymore. But one thing I'll do is kind of even back a little bit more towards the beginning of the process. The other piece of being prepared and having expectations is, this is a great example. You and I, Todd, are working with a client now, moving from out of state, moving in state. And one of the buyers is a military member.
Right.
And so we talked, when I first talked with them, they said, yeah, well, we're going to do a VA loan. And I said, great, why don't you just talk with Todd's team about the differences between VA and conventional and that kind of thing. And, ultimately it sounds like this particular buyer is going to wind up going with the VA loan route. It saves them a little money. But I've been in situations where I've had that conversation. And it turns out the conventional loan is better. You just never really know unless you look at your situation. And so have those conversations a few months in advance rather than, trying to fumble and choose between loan products a day before you're writing an offer, No. So.
Well, and the thing is, most people fit into at least 3 boxes, if not more. So, and what I mean by a box is there's different things that may fit a criteria of what you're looking to do to be successful with your mortgage, right? And so my job is to line them up best to worst and then go through each one of those choices so they understand. So we have many veterans who don't even do the VA loan because they found that, oh my gosh, this option I didn't even realize may be a better option for me, rather than just coming to the conclusion this is the only option, is doing the VA route. And that doesn't mean VA is bad. It just means that every circumstance is like every town that's different in data. There are different programs that you have to be able to explore. And my job is to put those in order of opportunity. And when those opportunities, at least now you're being empowered to be able to make a choice with logic versus emotion.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest mistake I think buyers make is they shortchange the effort on the financing piece. And they think, well, I'm going to, they do, and they pour into the house piece of it, right? I want the house with this features and this and that. And they do a good job of that because they think, well, I'm going to live in the house every day. Well, you're also going to pay that mortgage payment every day, every month. So you spend
long
at least
after the closing's gone, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And so spend as much time drilling into the details of your financing as you do the search, right? So
100%.
I think that's a good word for today. I don't know if we have anything that we need to share left this month, but I'm excited to see where the year goes.
I'll tell you what, every month will be an interesting reason for you to tune in because month to month, things are changing very significantly. And I hopefully you'll use this opportunity in viewing this program to be able to keep yourself updated with what's going on, at least financially and in the real estate market.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Well said, Todd. Hey, man, enjoy the nice weather. Get out there and get some sunshine.
I'm going to give it a whirl. You too. See you later.
Man. See you, everybody.